So when we're talking about conflicts that exist in relationships, and you've been hearing me talk about there's basically five weighted areas, or there's like a pentagon, basically I call it the pentagon of relationships, that we can look at to help us to understand our conflicts better. And of course, by understanding our conflicts better, then we're able to actually to bring resolution to the conflicts or to troubleshoot it. All right. It's very important for us to understand that relationships revolves around active mirroring. Okay. And so that's another part that we have to look at in relationships. When we find ourselves not being able to see ourselves inside each other, that brings about a conflict. It brings about issues in the relationship. Mirroring is important because none of us can escape our own nature. None of us can escape who we are. We all are projecting something into the relationship. When more than one person comes together with some type of agreement, right, or some type of interaction, that births culture. So, relationships is a container of culture. And so the culture holds the relationship. And in that culture, it revolves around the act of mirroring that keeps it together. So as soon as individuals in a relationship really don't begin to see themselves inside each other, then it begins to drive the conflict. Why? Think about it. When we're able to recognize ourselves in each other, it breeds more of a sensitivity. It breeds more of um, acknowledgement because you see yourself in that person. I'm not trying to hurt you. I can see it in myself. It brings about a simple, brings about a higher level of sensitivity to each other, and it brings about an awareness. There's no awareness that exists until we be able to self-reflect. And so the intimacy in relationships highly sits upon the ability to actively mirror, right? So everything in a relationship is an extension of what is from within us. There is no evolution in a relationship without the involution existing first, and us being mindful what is inside of us that's evolving inside of us to come out and to be expressed through what we project upon each other. So the mirroring piece in relationship really shows a lot in a relationship because it gives us an understanding about the nature of our relationship. Relationships should move us to a state of growth and to a state of balance. And so if the relationship finds itself, if you find yourself in a relationship not growing, we can look at the mirroring factor and begin to really start to dissect and look at that area inside the relationship simply because obviously there's something off with the involution because it's evolving something contrary to what you really want to experience in a relationship. Okay. And so that in itself really holds a lot of weight because when we talk about intimacy is based upon us being able to reflect to the point that we see ourselves, that we can see past ourselves. I'm able to see past myself to the point now that I'm able to be egoless. I know how to um, displace or I know how to sidestep my self importance to be able to see you as important while you're doing the same thing simultaneously. So we're holding each other's sight. And when we're able to do that, that brings about the magic of the intimacy. Then that takes the relationship and it invites a transcendental experience into the relationship. But it only happens when everybody in the relationship is able to displace their ego when it needs to be displaced. We're not saying dismiss the ego because ego has its place, but it's hard to regulate our egos when we cannot self-reflect. And so that's why the act of mirroring piece in relationship is very important, because most relationships get off kilter because of ego. So what's one of the best things to do, have in place, implement it actively to keep the ego um, in its proper place, is through the act of mirroring. All right. So